I'm a Paul Ryan fan. I don't agree with him on much of what he does. I think what he's done with Medicare and Medicaid, what he's wanted to do, I disagree with. But generally speaking, I think that we've been able to work with him.
Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid saying despite his disagreements with Paul Ryan on policies, he is still a fan. His quasi-endorsement comes as Ryan says he will only pursue the speakership if he has enough support. Earlier today, current Speaker John Boehner also voiced support for Paul Ryan as Speaker. Boehner says he will make a great Speaker and telling reporters that the House will vote for their Speaker next week. For more, let's bring in our political panel. First from Newsmax, Washington, noted Republican strategist Ford O'Connell, and Skyping in from Tampa, Florida, Democratic media strategist and Vice President of the KCOM Public Relations, Franco Ripple. Harry Reid also says nice things about you, too, as well, Ford. But let me ask you, do you want Harry Reid to be endorsing you if you're trying to court conservatives?
Well, if you're Paul Ryan, it's not exactly helpful, but it's also not the Fredo kiss of death. If Democrats really want to sink Paul Ryan, they'll run Nancy Pelosi out there and have her say, I heart Paul Ryan because he's going to help Democrats pass comprehensive immigration reform. This isn't nothing, but I will give Reid this. He's real good at stoking controversy and playing to the lowest common denominator, particularly talk radio for Republicans.
I mean, Franco, how cynical are we getting here that somebody from the opposite side of the aisle gives you a quasi-endorsement and we think it's bad? But from that standpoint, where do you think the Democrats are in all this? They're just kind of on the sidelines sort of watching all this unfold?
Well, it's an unfortunate truth that, Democrats are at sort of a low point in terms of numbers historically in Congress. So in many ways, they kind of have to be bystanders to the process. But they do have enough members to throw some serious weight into the speakership race. I think Paul Ryan has done an excellent job in playing his hand in this. He's going to be able to extract some concessions from some of the more conservative members because he's the only one that can rally enough around to actually win the speakership.
Ford, take us behind these closed doors today on Capitol Hill. What was going on? Do you feel like at the end of the day that Paul Ryan is going to get the endorsement of these House conservatives?
Well, he's going to meet with the House Freedom Caucus this afternoon, and the question is whether or not he's able to get it. I got to say this about Paul Ryan. Everyone says, well, the rhinos, the more establishment side, they're weak. Let me tell you what he's tried to do here. He's saying, I'll become Speaker if the following two things occur. 3 groups in the Republican caucus endorse me, including the House Freedom Caucus. And by the way, you get rid of the Thomas Jefferson motion to vacate the House seat. I mean, I got to give Paul Ryan a lot of credit here. He's bargaining better than Trump. And if he actually gets this through, great. And if he doesn't, guess what? I never wanted the job. He's figured out how to use leverage.
Franco, we want to move on right now to the vice president today, and just some interesting comments from the White House. So Paul says maybe, Joe says no. And I wanted to get your feelings about this because I think from Hillary Clinton's standpoint, from one sense, she's not going to have to spend a ton of money now in the primary. But from the other sense now, she may have to run a little bit more left in the primary, and that may not serve her well in the general. What were some of your thoughts as far as Vice President Joe Biden not getting in today?
Well, my first initial thought is, I've said all along from day one that Hillary Clinton is going to win the Democratic nomination. She's going to win the presidency and be a great president of the United States. I think today is a victory for her and for her campaign because she no longer has the threat of another sort of centrist Democrat in the fight, because that's what she is a moderate. She's a centrist. She's a reasonable, rational person. And that's what Joe Biden would have represented in the race. They would have taken support from each other.
This is the best day in Hillary Clinton's campaign thus far. None of the other 3 hobbits up there are going to win the nomination. We knew all along she's the front runner, and unless something happens in the Benghazi hearings or she gets indicted, she is indeed the Democratic nominee in 2016. But Biden could hang around, break the glass in case of an emergency.
I'm trying to figure out who the other 3 hobbits are because there's actually 5 on that stage. Just Sanders,
there's
one of those
Dopey,
hobbits?
Grumpy, and Sleepy. That's O'Malley, Sanders, and who else is out there? I don't even know. That's how hard it is.
We're down 1 now with Webb out of the race, but the reality is, Joe Biden is, regardless of your party, and members of Congress and people who've served in government feel this way, Joe Biden is one of the finest public servants our nation's ever had. He cares deeply about the country. He would have made a great president. But I'm excited to see that this leaves really the way forward for Hillary Clinton. And I'm excited to see her face down any of the Republicans, any of the 75 of them who talk about real hobbits that are running.
You know what? I mean, a lot of the Republicans today said nice things about Joe. That wouldn't have happened if he had gotten into the race. So he's probably going to leave now politics with some pretty good numbers. I want to move forward to the Republican race. New poll out of New Hampshire. Not good numbers for Jeb Bush. What is happening with the Bush campaign right now? He's at 10%. Donald Trump and Carson, this has just been a familiar tune that we've been singing for the last couple of months. What's going on here in New Hampshire?
Well, New Hampshire's critical to Bush if he wants to win the nomination, and frankly, he dropped $4 million in ads over the span of a month, and it didn't move the needle. In fact, I actually think he went back a percentage. People think that Bush is the best prepared Republican to be president. The problem is they don't trust him on immigration. They don't trust him on Common Core, and basically the autumn of Trump continues. He's considered by Republicans not only to win the nomination, but also to be the best in the general election. This is what happens when you lead the polls for 4 months in a row, and guess what? People are buying Trump's psychological warfare.
Yeah, and I've got to agree with Ford there that actually at some point perception becomes a reality. The most shocking number to me out of that poll isn't necessarily Trump's top line. It's the fact that now 4 out of 10 Republican primary voters believe that he will win the nomination. He was way down the line the last time we looked at numbers like that. Now, by a clear majority, they think he's going to win. That's the real surprise, is that people are starting to take him seriously.
Well,
even if
let me say one thing about that, Franco. You make a good point, but I will say this. About 2/3 of Republican primary voters have not actually made their decision. And the question is, on the more establishment side, that's what's splintered. If someone can rise up and the rest drops out, Trump might find himself in a fight. But right now, he's sitting pretty in the catbird seat.
All right. Thank you, Ford. Thank you, Franco. Ford, Franco. Sounds like the new car coming out of Detroit. Appreciate it, guys. All right, you heard what our guest had to say. Now we want to hear from you. Send us your comments to newsmaxtv.com/comments. You can also send your comments via email, Facebook, and Twitter. After the break, the refugee crisis in Europe. 2 leading experts when Newsmax Prime continues.